We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. We're lucky to have with us longtime host of this here radio show and Liberty Nation's senior political analyst, Mr. Tim Donner. And we're all set for our Super Tuesday Fallout special. What lies ahead on the road to the White House? Thanks for being here, Tim.
Well, always a pleasure, Mark.
So, Tim, if I know you half as well as I think I do, you've spent the entire day poring over the percentages and the margins for Super Tuesday. But like myself, I spent hours putting together my little Excel document so I could figure out leads and whatnot. But the reality is this was always going to be a two-horse race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, wasn't it?
Well, I think most of us made the mistake at the beginning of this Republican campaign of thinking that this was an open primary, that Ron DeSantis could win, Nikki Haley could win, even Vivek Ramaswamy was on the rise. It seemed that Trump was old news and that there was just too much baggage attached to him. But I think we all got it wrong because this is essentially an incumbent running for re-election. And part of the reason I say that is because Nikki Haley gave an excellent account of herself in this campaign. She did about as well as she possibly could. So yes, part of this is the fact that Haley really ran a very good campaign and yet she never had a chance. She was lost on Super Tuesday by an average of almost 50 points. And I don't mean she got almost 50%. I mean she lost by almost 50% on average. And that speaks more to the continued dominance of Donald Trump. And I don't think anybody really thought that he could take 1 foot out of what seemed to be the political grave and not only win the nomination, but be favored to win the general election. I mean, it's a remarkable comeback story. I think it's going to go down sort of next to Richard Nixon, who in 1962, having already lost the presidency in the gubernatorial race in California, said you won't have Dick Nixon to kick around anymore. And of course, 6 years later, he was sitting in the White House. So this has to go down as one of the great comeback stories. And the narrative for Trump is very much on the line here. You know, as I've said, if he wins this election, he will be seen by historians as the single dominant figure who changed politics in a very tangible way. If he loses, he will be seen as someone who won a fluke election and then brought his party low in 3 or 4 cycles after that, from which the party will have some real trouble recovering. So there's an enormous disparity between if Trump wins or if Trump loses, not the least of which is if he wins, he goes to the White House. If he loses, he almost surely will go to prison. That's a pretty good incentive to run a good campaign, I would say.
Yeah, as our legal affairs editor, Scott DeCascenza, often points out, winning the presidency is Donald Trump's best legal defense right now. Something I want to pick up, actually a couple of things I want to pick up on what you just said there, Tim. You talked about the Tricky Dicky, Richard Nixon, and how he staged this comeback. But there's another similarity to another election, and it was the 1912 election, which I believe is the only time we've had an incumbent versus a president. So it's essentially 2 presidents running against each other. That was Howard Taft and Teddy Roosevelt. And so it's almost, as we like to say, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
Well, you had that was sort of an intra-Republican Party battle between Taft and Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt. He was
Teddy
the
Roosevelt,
Republican
the
Roosevelt,
Bull
as
Moose
opposed
Party.
to
Yeah.
and then the Bull Moose Party.
Mm,
But he miscalculated. He thought that Taft would simply continue his policies and do everything he wanted. And when he didn't, he tried to come back at him. And that resulted in the disaster of the Woodrow Wilson presidency. And right now, Nikki Haley is in a position where she, to some degree, controls the non-Trump
mm.
wing of the Republican Party. And the degree of enthusiasm she expresses is going to be important. But at this point, I mean,
Yeah, I
the
mean,
the deficits for Joe Biden are almost unspeakably bad in every single area. The only place where he has an advantage is in abortion. And I think Trump has a very clear plan to depict Biden and the Democrats as the true extremists when it comes to abortion, wanting the right for a woman to abort a pregnancy right up to the point of birth. And that can be presented as an extreme policy. So I mean, uh, Biden's presidency has just been an abject failure. And it's almost gotten to the point, Mark, where I think the fact of Trump being the competitor may not even matter. It could be any Republican.
well, of course,
Um,
yeah. Now there are no more Republicans in the race, with
correct.
Nikki Haley dropping out during the week after her. Admittedly, it was a good show. It was a good show that she did. You know, she won. She won Vermont, although that was with, I reckon that was with the help of a lot of Democrat votes because it's an open primary system on that. But we're going to talk about the numbers, the Joe Biden versus Donald Trump rematch after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.